Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to a brand new demystifying post-production month. It's January 2023. My name is Ellie Wade. I'm a trainer at Maxon, and I'm joined by Lionel Vicidomini. And in the background is also Dustin Valkema and Ian Robinson. Hey guys, it's nice to see you.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
Happy Monday and New Year and
Yes.
everything. All the festivities.
Happy everything to everyone.
All the things, all the time. Happy.
All the things. Also, hey to everyone in the chat. So hey to Hannah, Marcelo, and Jay. How's it going, guys? It's good to have some of the regulars with us, and hopefully some new faces today with the topic that we'll be covering. And we'll talk about that in just a sec. But very quickly, let's go through some housekeeping. So on my screen right now are the events that we have going on, and all you need to do, head over to the maxon.net/events page, and you can see all the amazing sessions that we have going on, all the great events, whether it's live, whether it's these webinars that we're hosting as a whole kind of Maxon collective. So today, Mondays, we have our demystifying post-production, which we can see is going to be Redshift workflows in Blender. And I'm going to let Lionel talk about what he's going to be covering today in just a sec. And starting last week, we have a brand new hands-on with Maxon whole workshop. It's a whole 6-week workshop with myself and Joe Herman. And basically the idea is to we're covering a whole character creation workflow. So creating the character in ZBrush, then we're doing UVing, we're doing some texturing in Redshift. We're then looking at sort of rigging the body, the face, and that's a really great workshop. He's the guy that's doing it. I'm just sort of there in awe, learning alongside all of you. So definitely register for that if that sounds like something you want to be a part of. And then this Thursday, we also have another Ask the Trainer where Noseman and Jonas look like they're going to be covering a few more of those winter scenes that they did. I believe it was a Thursday just before the holiday break. They were looking at creating some snowy setups. So they'll be doing that again. And then, as always, we have the amazing VFX and Chill with Seth and Hashi on Friday. If you ever missed anything or you want to learn something new, head over to this very special YouTube channel here, which is the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. Everything is timestamped thanks to Dr. Sassy. Everything that we do, including this session today, is recorded and gets uploaded within usually about 4 to 8 hours. So normally I'm asleep because I'm in a different time zone. But yeah, Dr. Sassy gets that on there very quickly for us all. Also, in the handout section of GoToWebinar, you can find this page here, which has a very special link for a free t-shirt. We like to say thank you to you all for being part of our webinars and our live sessions. So click that link, type in that secret password, which is Creative 2023, and grab yourselves a t-shirt. All you got to do is pay for shipping, which varies wherever you're from. A few more links on there are the project files for this month, as well as the 2 links, the events and the YouTube page that we just talked about. Through that, cool. So let's have a look. So this whole month, a brand new month, comes with a brand new topic, and we're talking all things Redshift. And so over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be diving into showing you Redshift workflows across a variety of DCCs. So we're talking Blender, we're talking ZBrush, we're talking Houdini, and finally will be Maya. And so it seems appropriate now, Lionel, to hand over to you to hear a bit about Blender and Redshift.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. So yes, we're going to see Redshift for Blender. And well, I'm going to show you my screen. Could you hand it over?
I can. Let me just chuck it over. There you go.
There we are. Okay, so do you see Blender?
Yes, we do.
All right, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my camera too.
Oh, this is complicated technology, man.
I'm sorry, Adrian?
C'est compliqué, quoi.
Yes, we have Adrien with us, who speaks French. Merci d'être venu, Adrien. But we're going to speak in English. Don't worry for everyone.
Sorry. Your life?
Okay. Okay, so yes, Blender for Redshift, or Redshift for Blender. So let me introduce you to Blender, which I'm sure you all know. It's free software, but among all, it's a very interesting software because it's been here for almost 20 years now, more than that, I think. And it's been going on and getting better and better. So what's interesting is for a few years now, Blender is getting more in touch with the other software, meaning that we can use Blender as a tool alongside your favorite software. So you just go to blender.org and you can download it. And if you want to use Redshift with it, you can, because it's included with the Maxon One subscription. So you just have to install it. So just to show you very quickly the end file I'm going to show you today. It's interior scene. Well, it's not the only file I'm going to show you. It's an interior scene where we have our rendering, and so we have here on the right, and the render is not very fast. I think that's because of the streaming. Well, we will see that. And this scene is very simple. It has Blender elements, and we can see here we have those two boxes here are proxies coming from Redshift. So that's one of the workflow I want to show you, and something that other people are going to show during this month is how to use proxies between applications. The idea is you create your assets, and then you can use it in whichever software you want, whether it's Blender, Redshift, Blender, Cinema 4D, Houdini, and so on. It works both ways. So before recreating this scene, I'm not going to do everything from scratch because that would be too much to fill in 1 hour. I want to show you first how to install it, how to install Redshift for Blender, and then how to set up a few things. So let's stop that. I'm going to create a new scene. Okay, so this is Blender 3.4.1. This is the most recent version, and I'm using the very latest add-on for Blender. What's interesting to know is all the add-ons for all the plugins for the different DCC use the same core from Redshift, the same render engine. So if you're going to install your Redshift using the Maxon app, so I'm starting the Maxon app to show you. I have Redshift here, and then when you will install it, you will have the option to install several plugins. For the Blender add-on, you have to do it manually. So it's important to note that it's in a beta state. So the plugin is not finished yet. There is a few, well, more than a few features missing, and some other stuff not already working. But most of the plugin is working very good, very well, and it's very usable. To install it in Blender, you go to the preferences, and you're going to the add-on. And then here, this is where you're going to use the add-ons. So the add-ons are in Blender what you would call plugins that you can distribute freely, use as you want, and Redshift goes through there. So you're going to install, and you're going to fetch the zip file. If I'm going to show you where is it, let me find on my desktop, coming there. So here on your local drive, usually you will find it in the program data, which is the hidden folder. So you have to find it, to unhide it, and then program data, Redshift, and in the plugins, you will find here the Blender plugin. This is for a different version. So even though I'm using the 3.4, I'm going to use the one for 3.1. Don't worry if the version doesn't match up exactly. You're going to use the closest one to what version of Blender you're using. And here we can see we have our Redshift for Blender point zip. And this is the one I'm going to install. So here I'm going to copy the path. And then here you're going to install. And then here in the Blender file view, you're going to paste. And you will find your Redshift for Blender. So I'm not going to do that, obviously, because it's already installed. If you click here and then install the add-on, it's going to do it. For me, I'm going to cancel. And you will find the add-on here, Redshift Render Engine. Then you're going to click, and Redshift will be available here as an option as a render engine, Redshift Render. Okay, so that's the first step. There is another one which is pretty important. There is the problem of the color management, because Blender is using its own color management. Here I'm going back to Cycles, which is the render engine for Redshift. And actually, yeah, I install my own OCIO config file, but here in the view transform, you don't have usually these ACES. If you just install Blender, you won't have it. You will have all this thing, and this is the filmic workflow, which is used by default. So if you don't want that, you're going to use, you're going to here on Redshift Render, then you will go here to the output properties. And here you will find a color management and another color management. So actually this is the one. And here you can see we're rendering in ACES CG. We have here a bubble here. If I click on it, you will find a page on a forum where you should download this file and follow the instruction. And that will give you a command file that will allow you to launch Blender with the right environment variable, so that Redshift is going to be loaded. And you will have here the ACES 1.0 SDR video installed. So just to show you very quickly, in my folder again, if I go there, we have program files, Blender Foundation, and here we have the command file I have installed. So you're going to launch Blender with this command file instead of the usual executable here, because it's going to load for you the right OCIO workflow. Okay, so now we're done with this, which is quite technical. We're going to see how to use the plugin for real. So let's go here, of course, to the Redshift Render. And I'm just going to create a few stuff to show you how it works. So in Blender, I'm going to create a new object using Shift-A and then a mesh, and let's create our monkey, Susanna. I'm going to subdivide it. So I'm using shortcuts. This is not a webinar about Blender, but more about Redshift. So I'm going to try to go faster on Blender specific stuff. So here, let's shade it on smooth. I'm going to add also a plane, scale it. Let's go there. I'm going to move it. So I put it in the ground. Okay, and now you have some object. You're going naturally to want to render something. And well, it's special. You have to do a few things first. So for example, if I go here for the render, you're going to use here the viewport shading. And if you do that, we have an error message. You need to have a camera on the scene. So usually when you have Blender, when you open Blender, you're going to have a cube and a camera. And I have erased all that. So when I start a new file, there is nothing there. So I have to create manually my camera. And you need to do it if you want to have to have Redshift working. So Shift A, I'm going to create a camera. And to frame it like here, I'm going to Control Alt 0. Okay, now we have a camera. And if I orbit around, we can see our camera. So let's go back here. Hit 0 on the numpad to frame it. And if I launch a render, well, it's working, but we don't see anything. Because by default, there is no light, no material on the scene. So you need to go here to the world properties. And for example, use one of the environment. So by default, it's none. I'm going to use physical sky. So we have the physical sky exactly the same as we would have in Cinema 4D. Doing that, if I render again, still nothing. Okay, that's because by default, again, you're going to need in the Redshift render properties. So here, you're going to use the global illumination. And by default, it's off. It should be on. So let's go to brute force for the primary GIA engine. And the second one, Radiance Point Cloud. And if you know already Redshift, you will find your way because everything is the same. It's just spread out in the software. In a software you don't know, and even if you know the software, well, you have to search for it to find all the right switches to toggle. So now we have our GI, and because our environment only works in GI, we can see something. Okay, so we're getting there. We have something, but still nothing very interesting because we don't have any material. So now let's apply some material. I'm going here to open this. This is the timeline. So one cool feature in Blender is you can switch any window to any other window. It's very different from Cinema 4D, meaning that the viewport can be anything you want. And here, this timeline can transform into the shader editor, where we're going to create our material. So I'm going to click here on the plane, and I'm going to go here on the material properties and create a new material. Now we have a material, but there is a caveat. This principal BSDF is a cycle material. It doesn't work with Redshift. You really have to use Redshift material. So I'm going here to add a RS node 3. And now we have a Redshift material. I'm going to delete this material, which is useless. And this is the standard material that you all know. So if we go here in the base properties, we can find our diffuse color here, the reflection with the weight, the roughness, everything is the same as Cinema 4D. So for example, in Cinema 4D, which I have open already, let's go there. If I create a material, oh yes, I need to switch to Redshift. And now if I create a material, a standard material, you will find everything just the same. See, base, color, weight, everything is there, the same as here. You have other option here in the node panel. So if you hit N, you can see this node panel. It can be hidden, or you just click here. And here in properties, you have everything that's there, which is here, but a few other options. For example, the diffuse model or an layer, as you can see, is not available here. You will find it on this panel here. And on this panel is exactly the same as Cinema 4D. So everything you know about Redshift on Cinema 4D or Maya or Houdini, you can translate it here to Blender. Okay, so that's for the plane with one first material. Let's call it ground. And I'm going to take the Susan, do the same thing, add RS node 3. I'm going to delete this one. And this is my Susan material. So let's call it Susan. And here in the base, I'm just going to change the color so that it doesn't look the same as the ground. I'm going back to the ground, and by default, the material have a weight reflection. So I'm going to dim the reflection so that it's going to be a pure diffuse object. So now if I go back here, we have our material. Okay, so everything is very blue because of our sky. And also, yeah, the performance is not very good, I think, because of the streaming. I was afraid of that. Well, you'll tell me if it's all right. Anyway, we can see we have our rendering working, and we can work now on everything. So let's try something else. I'm going back here to the shading, so to turn off the render. And what we could do is try to tweak a bit the environment. So if I go back here, we have our physical sky. What I could do is use the environment instead. So when you do that, actually the environment shader in Redshift in Blender is found here in the world. So here on your shader editor, you will find the world, and we have here our physical sky. This one is the old one from Blender. You don't need it. And this one is the one you want. If you change from physical sky to environment, it's going to change. And here, for example, we could use HDR to drive the lighting. So that's what I'm going to do. So we can open it here with open. Same thing here. So let's go. And I'm going to navigate to a folder, my HDR, for example, and I'm going to use Canada Small, which is an XR I know very well. Here, the color space by default is raw. I'm going to change it to Linear Rec 709 as RGB. Okay, now if I go back here to the render, we can see we have our environment. So that works. And from there, you can do whatever you want. So for example, I'm going to take my ground. Let's go back here to the object. And we have our color. And what I could do is add a texture. So it could be any texture, bitmap texture, or we could use, so Shift A, or I could go here to add. This is the same thing. And in the texture, we can find our Maxon noise. And you're going to plug it here. So I'm going to plug it in the diffuse, for example. If you don't find your noise, you see, they are not here. It's very weird because, again, remember, it's in the node panel. And here we can find our noise. And let's try, for example, a Luca noise. So now everything is plugged in. And if I launch the render, we can see the result. Okay, so by default, Blender is going to render the whole frame here. So that's a lot. Maybe you don't want that. Let's go back here. Again, I'm going to hit 0 so that I'm going to frame the camera. And if I hit render, it's going to render stuff outside of the camera. Let's zoom out. So you can see here, this is the frame of the camera, and this is out of the frame. So if I want to not see that, let's go back here, and you're going to the output properties, and you have the render region. If I click there, now if I'm going to render, it's only going to render this frame. So it's going to be a lot faster. But again, if you rotate orbit around, you're going to leave your camera and have the whole frame render. Also, you might not want to have all those highlights here of the object and so on. So you can hide them if you click here, show overlay. You even have the shortcut, which is Shift Alt Z. So this is what I'm going to do, Shift Alt Z, much clearer this way. So let's go back to 0 on the numpad so that I frame only this part. And if you want to have the actual final render, if you want to preview it on your viewport, you can do it. If you go back here in the render settings, and you will find in the output, you can see here, force progressive for IPR. This is the IPR. So we don't have a render view window like you could find in the other DCC, in Cinema 4D or Houdini and so on. You only can do a render through your viewport like this. Okay, so if you want to do a bucket rendering, you don't have the option anywhere. This is actually here. So I'm going to click there. And now it's going, if I click here, you see a reference point cloud, and then it's going to calculate the bucket. And this is your final rendering. And speaking of final rendering, we can find there is also a default option which is on the other software and off in Blender. It's the unified sampling. If I go to the unified sampling, we can see our adaptive error threshold. So this is where in Cinema 4D, for example, you're going to tweak your render, the quality. This is this slider actually when you choose in the basic mode, low, medium, high, and very high, you just working here on the threshold. Okay, if we go to advanced, this is the quality of your render, roughly. So this is pretty good. This is rough. This is very rough, very high quality, and so on. And this number alone is going to change your render from low quality to high quality to very fast to possibly very slow. So in Blender, it works the same way, but you have to tweak to turn on the adaptive sampling. So to do this, you're going to go to the system. It's quite hidden. You go to the system and you're going to the experimental option, and you will find it there, enable automatic sampling. So anyway, a good idea if you install Redshift to avoid doing all this stuff all the time. I mean, tweak here the render region to crop to the camera, turn on the global illumination, which is off by default, and so on and so on. What you could do is go there in your file, and you're going to, in default, to save as a startup file. Of course, I'm not going to do it here because I have those two objects. It's going to save everything as it is. But if you have an empty scene, it's a good way to remember all the settings. So anyway, now I have enable optics and automatic sampling. That's going to work. And if I launch the render, so it's calculating. And at the end, we're going to have good quality render. So yes, this is very slow. This shouldn't be slow.
Can I jump in a bit?
Yes, of course. Maybe you have an idea why it's. Well, I know it's because of the
slow.
streaming.
No, it's not slow because of the streaming. It's slow because instead of using a light, you're using an environment. An environment, it's harder to clean than a light. So instead of using the environment that you did by default with physical sky and whatever you had there, right? You should have been using a dome light. Now, a dome light being a light will clean up way faster than this. And you can use the exact same texture as the environment. Now, probably using an environment in Blender is kind of the standard way to go, but it's not for Redshift.
All right, but I have tried that just before, and it wasn't. We will see with my final scene, which use direct lighting. Well, we will see. Anyway, yeah, it's a good idea to show anyway. So, like you said, we can just here go back to the environment, none. And we're going to, so in the world, it's going to be there, but not connected anymore. I think just to be sure, I'm going to do that. And then we're going to add a light. And you want to use your light, you're going to use whichever begins with RS. So it will be the RS dome light. And if you go to the light panel here, object data properties for the light, don't be confused with all this, which is really important here is the redshift light. So this is indeed a dome light, and we can open here and load actually our Canada monorail, which is already there. And let's see if it's going to be faster. So it's going to be direct lighting, not environment, like Adrian said. It should be faster. Let's see. Yeah, that's what's always difficult when you switch software. They all have their way of working. And yes, in Blender, most of the people do everything with the world environment. This is where you're going to load an HDRI. There is no dome light in Blender. And in Redshift, usually you're going to use this. You see, it's a bit faster.
And believe me, it's noise, not quite noise free, but it's less noise than using the environment. A lot less.
Noise, yes, the noise is much better. Yes.
Now, to explain you the technical reason why this is rendering is because the dome light, like area lights, for instance, they support multi-importance sampling, which allows us to actually detect which samples are good and which are not. An environment doesn't have the same technology. Okay, so it will be way noisier than a light. That's why using a dome light is the way to go instead of the environment that the Blender users are preferring. Sorry for jumping in.
No, you're right. Okay, so let's try maybe something else because I'm just at the beginning. I'm showing you stuff. And we're going to try with my actual scene. So here you've just seen how to use Blender. There is many steps, but like I said, if you save a default scene, it can save you a lot of time. And you just have to remember where your settings and object are going to be. So now I'm going to use a scene I have prepared, which is interior RS start. I'm not going to save this one. And this is the scene. So just to show you, it's a very basic interior. I have put on the back face culling. So actually this is of course closed box with just opening here. I didn't put any glass on to have faster rendering. So it's very usual. We have a curtain here and we have a camera. So let's go back here. This is the viewport where I'm going to do all my stuff, and this is the viewport for the rendering. The difference here is this one, I'm just deactivated all the overlays so that I can see clearly my render. And here I can just use stuff on. This is a common way of working in Blender because you can have many windows doing different things and so on. So I have just taken a few steps. I have already applied for most of the material, object and material. I didn't do it though for the ground because I'm going to do it live. Also, there is no lighting. So this way I'm going to recreate everything so that you can see a more common workflow if you really want to work with Blender. And the idea here is in the end to import an RS Proxy, so an object from Cinema 4D, for example, a chair or couch, and include it inside this scene. So all you can see here has been done in Blender. And in the end, I will include stuff from other software, naming here Cinema 4D. Okay, so first, about the lighting. There is no lighting in the scene. If I go back to my environment, there is no environment. Because this is an exterior, I'm going to add a simple physical sky. This is just going to add a bit of light into the scene. Most of the lighting will be with other light, direct lighting. So physical sky, doing that. In the world environment, we can see we have our physical sky. And this is a physical sky that you all know. You can change whatever you want. For example, I could tweak here the intensity of the exterior to have more or less light. If I launch the render, again, the result is going to be very disappointing because remember that we need to put on the global illumination. This is the default value, so it's very frustrating because in Cinema 4D it's not the case. It's very easy to forget. So let's switch to brute force. See, it's already better. And the irradiance point cloud. And I can definitely tell you that it's not as fast as it should be because I worked on this scene all day. And yes, this is not right. So I hope this is, I don't think it's Blender's fault, nor Redshift. It's the streaming software we use. All right, okay, so it's a bit difficult to see. Anyway, it's difficult to see, of course, because there is no lighting. It's only the physical sky. Okay, you will not render an interior with just a physical sky with nothing else. Like Adrian said, it's the environment. So it's going to be only GI lighting. It's not very optimized. So what I'm going to do is turn off the rendering, and in this window, let's add a light. This will be RS distant light. So this will be the physical scan actually. So here it is. I'm going to move it over there and then rotate it like this so that our lighting is going to go in the right direction. So yeah, actually it wasn't the right direction. It would be more like that. Perfect. Where we have our opening. I'm already doing. Yes, okay, now we are. Here we are. So we can see here the direction of the light. So this is infinite light. And if we go there, we can see this is our physical sun. It's hidden here. You can see physical sun, and you have all the settings we are familiar with. So if I go back there and render, we can see our light. So from there, what I can do is tweak the light and change, for example, the rotation, and we can see our patch of light on the ground moving. Let's go there for example. So yeah, it's very noisy and very slow. I'm really disappointed to see it that slow.
It might be the driver. Nvidia lately has an issue with the drivers. Sorry, where if you have two apps open that are both using a lot of VRAM, it won't flash the VRAM. So basically, it's kind of working on the fumes. Let's say you'll have to restart probably Blender and close C4 to make it faster. But it is what it is. It's a driver issue, nothing else.
Yes, I guess because this is really too slow to show you stuff, I'm afraid. So sorry about that. Maybe we can have a few questions. I'm going to close Cinema 4D. I'll have to reopen it because I want to export proxy from there, but I'm going to close it. And I guess I'm going to close also Blender. And let's see if it's going to, we're going to have better performance. So maybe there is question in the chat.
Yes, there is actually one from James. So he was saying, since it lets you graph out a material for cycles / EV and Redshift at the same time in a material, is there any penalty to have the alternate nodes for the non-Redshift engine at the same time?
Not, I didn't notice any performance drop or whatever. It's just messy to have two material next to each other, but it doesn't seem to do anything either way. If you go back to cycles or EV and go back to Redshift, they just ignore each other. Something to confirm with the developer, I guess, but it doesn't seem to have an impact. So as you can see, we have our performance back. So I'm pretty happy to see that. This is the real performance. You can see it's much, much faster. Is there other question?
So there have been a couple, but Adrian has kindly been answering them in the background for us.
Perfect. All right, so here, this is much better. I can tell you I'm relieved because, well, you can see this is Redshift, this is fast. Before it was very, very slow. Whether it's Blender's fault or I think it's the Nvidia driver, most probably. Okay, so here we have our patch of light here. It's very sharp. I'm going to change the shadow softness. So exactly the same way I would do in Cinema 4D. And now we have something better. And you can see we have more lights bouncing in the scene. So it's a lot better. So now what I could do is just add a bit of light inside the our building here. I'm just going to add some fake bounce light, adding redshift light over there. So let's do it. I'm going to add a light and use a physical light. So the physical light is actually the IR light. As you can see here, we have redshift light. This is the light, which is the IR area light. And we can tweak here the size. So again, there is some kind of trap. If I move it there, I'm going to slide it this way. So 90 degrees, okay, minus 90 degrees. Let's move it here. And if I increase the size here, it's going to increase the size in just one direction. As you can see here on the X axis, it's all right. It's not on the Y axis. So let's go back to 0.6, and even worse, if I go to 1, for example, so on this direction, we don't see anything. So it doesn't matter. It's not really a problem. I'm going to change the size. Let's go to 3, maybe 2. And then here, I want to have like 3. So you just have to imagine that it's a rectangle, maybe 3.5. And I know for a fact that the intensity is much too strong. So let's go back to maybe 10. And let's launch the render. And yes, you can see it's very strong. Too strong because it flattened out everything almost. So let's go back maybe to 4. Okay, that's better. And the more direct lighting you have in your interior, the faster it's going to be. Okay, so now there's still
Sorry,
one
can
big
I
step.
can I jump in a bit?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Can you please go to the Redshift physical light and change it from square to rectangle?
It's a rectangle.
Then the size should work. I mean, if you're trying to resize it from the viewport, it should work. If it shouldn't stay as square, because right now what you have as a behavior is square. But I've just tested this. It does work. So try to change it from rectangle to square and back.
It does work.
No. In the viewport, I mean.
Well, yes, in the viewport, as you can see, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, just go to the area shape, change it from rectangle to square and back to. Sorry, not here. Sorry, at the top. Go to the top. Up. You see, its area shape is square. Yeah, change it to. There you go.
All right. Okay. Yes. Good catch.
Okay, this should give you exactly what you need. Unfortunately, I don't know why by default we have a square.
All right, and then we go back here. Okay.
Yes, this is the right behavior.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So let's go back here. Okay, so yes, now let's go. Let's take care of the ground of the floor. So just to give you a very simple example of how to create a material for the floor. So the floor is this. Let's go back to the object. And we don't have any material. So if you create a material here, new, it's going to create for you cycle material. So you don't want that. Let's add RS node 3. And like Elise asked if we can have this one and this one coexisting. Yes, it doesn't seem to do any harm, but it's messy. I don't like it, so I'm going to delete it. And we have our standard material. So now you have to be aware of a few things. If you want to use texture, you can already do it with the Blender way. Drag and drop stuff here. The best way to do it is to use here in the texture and use directly the RS texture. Okay, now here we have our general. Let's zoom out a bit, get a few more room here. And you're going to open your texture through there. So let's go, and in my texture folder, I already have my parquet flooring. So let's use the color. I'm in sRGB, perfect. I'm going to plug it to the color here. Now I'm going to duplicate this one. And let's, well, first let's see how it looks. So if I hit render, as you can see, we're right. But the mapping is not the way I want. So I'm going to plug here the out color directly to the surface. This way I can see it more clearly. And if I want to rotate it, you have everything there that works the way you want. So let's rotate the texture to 90 degrees. Okay, now we have more something in the right direction. And I'm going to change the scale to 2 and 2. Okay, now we can see the board, it's better. Let's go back here and plug this one. Okay, that would be the same thing as the solo node and when you solo something in Cinema 4D. Okay, now I've done that. I'm going now to duplicate this node. So this way I can have my mapping this way. And I'm going to use my other map. So roughness, it's the bracket roughness. You need to put it in row. And we're going, of course, to put it to the roughness of the reflection. Okay, now if I want to add some bump, you go to the geometry. So same place you would find the bump, and you have the bump map and plus add node. If I use it, we have a RS bump map, perfect. And here in the option, you will see height fill is a bump map, tangent space will be a normal map. So actually I'm going to use a normal map. So let's fetch it. It's here, open, and let's use the bracket drawing normal. I'm going to plug it here, and then the bump map here, let's change from height fill to tangent space. And don't forget, yes, we're not in sRGB. It's very, very important for a normal map not to be in sRGB. I mean, it's very, very important. It's going to fail horribly if you don't change that. So from sRGB to raw. And that's it, we have our material. So it's too shiny. As you can see, our reflection here is very strong, very, very sharp. So I would like to dim that. Let's use on the roughness in the utility. I will find in the color actually. I will find the color correct. Let's plug it here. And let's change the gamma. So it's going to, well, to change the gamma, let's go to maybe 2, yes. And as you can see, our floor is less shiny. Well, 2 was a bit too strong. Let's go back 1.5. All right, you can see it's better. And so on, so on. From there, it's the way you would do it as usual. For example, I'm going to duplicate this RS color correct. I'm going to go back to normal gamma, and I would like to desaturate my ground, which is too strong. So let's go to 0.8. Yes, that's better. Maybe shift a bit the hue. Yes, that's very strong. So maybe let's go back to 0.1. And try to tweak your color and so on. So it's the as usual. Something I would like to take care of is the ceiling here. We have a lot of light bouncing on the floor, which is going to color red almost everything. So the way I would deal with that with Redshift is going to be the exact same way here in Blender. It's still Redshift, there is no difference. So everything you know about Redshift is going to apply on the other software. So here I'm going to use a shader switch, ray switch, sorry. So it's in the utility, I believe. It's, yes, the ray switch. So very, very important node, which is going to send for the camera this texture. So this is going to be what I'm going to see. But here in the GI, so let's go back here and you can see in our properties, the GI, I'm going to enable it and send for the GI, for the light that bounce, the ray that bounce, I'm going to use a color. And this is going to be a white color to really see the difference. So it's going to limit the color bleed. So let's launch. And as you can see, we don't have any color bleed anymore. So because this is maybe too much, there should be a bit of color bleed actually. Maybe what you could do is add just a tiny bit of redness this way. Not too much, maybe there.
You can also add a second color correction where you desaturate the original texture and then put that in the GI. It will be a
Yes.
bit more realistic.
Yes, because here this is much too strong. I mean, so let's use another color correction. I'm going to close this one. And we're going to plug this one here and desaturate a lot, but not entirely. This will be cleaner, I think. Yes, we have a bit of the, all right, maybe, well, I shouldn't tweak because we don't really have time. Yes, this is better. Not as red as before, but still there is a bit of the color bounce. So anyway, so you can see we can create our interior, we can tweak and so on. And that's all fine and dandy. So now I would like to show you, yes, still I have a little bit of time. Would like to show you, and I hope this is not going to hinder the performance. I will close Cinema 4D after that, using a proxy. So the proxy workflow in Blender is not quite there yet. It mostly works, but there is a few drawbacks to note. The idea here is you can use any object, Redshift object, in your scene. So here in Cinema 4D, I'm going to change to Redshift. And in the object, I'm going to find an object. So for example, I could use a chair and I have all these chairs available. So maybe we could use this one. I'm going to put it in the scene. And this is a Redshift chair, an object. You can see with everything. We have texture, which have here we have our all our stuff and so on. So is it already? Oh yes, made a mistake. This is not a Redshift chair. So let's find the right one. So maybe, okay, let's take this one. So you can see it's a Redshift because there is the icon. I went too fast and almost made a big mistake. So now we have our object, everything. If you want to export it as a RS object, you're going here to the export, and then you're going to RS Proxy. So I'm going to click here on the gear, so that I'm going to export the selected object. Okay, that doesn't make any difference because it's the only object in the scene, but I could export just a part of the object. And I'm going to use a polygon connectivity to compress the data. And also important to note, you have to change your scale to 100 centimeter if you work with the default unit in Blender. So we could very well change unit in Blender. I didn't do it. So I'm going to scale my object directly there so that I won't have a tiny object or huge object in the end. Okay, and the proxy origin is going to be the object bounds. Why not? Here, it doesn't make any difference because we're centered on the world. So I'm going to export that. And I have already done some tests, as you can see. And let's create another chair. It's going to export it. And you will find it in your file. So if we go back to our Blender and proxies, this is the chair I have exported. Okay, so now I'm going to close Cinema 4D because I don't want to fight it against Blender. And here, if I want to import this object in Blender, we're going to use mesh, add RS Proxy. So here it is. And then in the object properties, you're going to select your proxy file. And let's go here and we're going to choose our chair. So now it's loaded. And if you want to see how it looks, unfortunately, it's not going to work. You won't be able to really see your mesh in the viewport preview. Okay, so there is a workaround, which is here, the proxy display mode. If you click there, it's going to create a bounding box, which is the size of your object. Okay, so this is the one. Now, if I move it, for example, there, maybe a bit more like this, we're going to see it. And I put it on the ground. Okay, so here inside, we can see we have our placeholder, which has the chair. And there is a small bug. I don't know if it's a bug, Adrian, you will tell me. But here, the placeholder is, here it's switched the path from relative to absolute. And with the absolute path, it doesn't work. So I have to reload it again. So let's go to the proxies, chair, and then it's going to work, as you can see, because we have all the stuff. So that's weird. I don't know if it's bug or limitation.
Might be a string caching issue somewhere,
I guess. And here we are. We have our chair. So what's really cool with this is our chair is comes from Redshift, but we can use it and do whatever we want with it. I can try to rotate. So another bug, I guess, I have to, every time I change the orientation and so on, I have to relaunch. But anyway, this is the chair, the exact same chair as we had in Cinema 4D. And we can move it, scale it, do whatever we want. We should be able to change the materials, but mostly it doesn't quite work either. You can change a whole material. You cannot change yet a specific material inside the file. So it's something's going to be supported soon, I guess. Anyway, you can see what's interesting here. It's the exchange of assets. I'm sure when Saul is going to show Houdini, Adrian is going to show Maya, they would use proxies. And the idea is if you create a proxy in Houdini, you can use it in Blender. In Blender, you can use it in Cinema 4D, in Cinema 4D, in Maya, and so on and so on. That's a very interesting workflow. So that in the unified workflow, you're going to use several DCC to assemble your scene. That's something very cool. And you could very well have asset browser filled with RS Proxy, which are going to work in any software you want. And thus is going to give us the advantage of not converting everything and so on. It's going to work just the same.
Just to jump in quickly, a Redshift proxy is in essence a Redshift scene. It's a bit of a black box, but you can override some parameters of the scene, like materials, maybe disable, enable lights, and so on. It doesn't mean you can load the proxy in your 3D app and break the proxy in the original geometry. No, no, no. It's still a kind of a black box, but in essence, being a scene means that you can actually move it to whatever 3D app you want. It doesn't have to be Blender or C4D or Houdini or Maya. It doesn't really matter. It's just a Redshift scene. Think as a proxy as just a scene, nothing else. Unfortunately, it's a black box, so you can't modify much. You can override things, but it's still very, very flexible.
Yeah, that's it. The geometry is frozen, but you can change material. You can get the light. It's pretty cool. Okay, so I guess because of the time, I just wanted to show you very quickly that would just fold it. In my last scene, let's load this one. And let's see if it works, if it's fast. So actually, I'm always looking here at this window which give you feedback on what's going on and so on. Okay, so it's very important to see if everything works, if there is no crash, no error, and so on. So I have always this open to see if everything is fine. And here we can see we have our final scene. And what I'm going to do is just render the scene because I didn't show that. At the end, if you want to do a final render, you're going to do it here in the render settings, render, and it's going to render following this output. So here it's 1920 by 1080, 50%, so half the resolution. So here, if I go to the render, it's going to launch everything. And what I did also here is I added AOVs inside Blender. So puzzle mat and so on. I don't have time to show everything, but you can do that to recreate your lighting inside Blender. That's very interesting because Blender has a compositor inside the application that you can use to directly composite everything without leaving the software. It's not the best compositor in the world, but it's inside Blender, available. It's pretty neat to use. So we have our render. As you can see, it's pretty fast for our interior scene. And once it's done, we will see some color correction being applied. All right, and when it's done, yes, we can't see it, but hold on. I'm going now to the compositing, and you can see here our final result. This is the one here. So we have this whole node tree, which is a compositor, and I have my diffuse lighting, my reflection, specular lighting, all being added on top of each other to get to the final rendering. Okay, and if we take a look here, I have added some vignetting. Here, this is the ellipse mask. If I just disable it, you can see. And I can change a bit of the saturation of things. So now, for example, I'm using here the puzzle mat to just tweak one object. If I change the hue, you will see this is the hue of the ground and nothing else is changed. So it's very easy to tweak a few things. I have a glare here to add some light. So you can see before, after. So very simple stuff, but it's still interesting to do it right inside Blender. It's really something I like. And to show you a few paths here, if I go to the viewer, so the diffuse lighting is this one, reflection. I have made several tutorials for the Maxon Training Team on how to composite. It's exactly the same thing. You just have to find your way using the application. It's pretty easy because you just add everything on top of each other. That's what all those nodes do. And we have our puzzle mat. If I tweak it here, this is to create matte. And then using the ZBrush color, you can just output what you want. So for example, here, the green, the blue, and those are going to be masked. You can use with color node like that. So in the end, it's very easy to composite. Something I really like with Blender, and you can do it very easily with Redshift because we have many AOVs, and that works perfectly well inside Blender. And yes, I guess that's it because that was long enough, I guess. Maybe do people have question about anything? But I think, yes, I can see Adrian have answered everything. Good job.
Yes, Adrian, thank you for going through those questions. And Lionel, thanks so much for that session. I'm really impressed by that compositing stuff directly inside of Blender. I think that's
it's very
incredible.
Cool.
Yeah, it's
I
really
can see a
great to
question.
do that directly in.
Can you export a PSD with the render passes? Yes, of course. It's just like any DCC. You can export EXR and so on. You just go back. Let's go back to the layout. What you can see, and here you're just going to render as OpenEXR multi-layer, or just OpenEXR is going to output all those passes.
There's no PSD support in case that's what you want to.
Yes. Yeah, PSD is not the way to go. Let me switch my camera back on.
Sure, yeah, I'll do the same. Wow, that was such an incredible hour. It's really interesting to see, for me as not being a Blender user, seeing Redshift inside of another software and seeing how it works and sort of differences and things like that. Yeah, I'm still baffled and impressed by that compositing workflow inside. Can I have it?
It's at the same time very different and very similar, but it feels very different because everything is elsewhere and you have different names sometimes. Yeah, it's a bit confusing, but once you know your way, it's pretty easy to use, and you can just translate everything you know in the software.
Yeah, and that interior scene looked incredible and rendered unbelievably fast.
If I can add a few things. When you're doing rendering in the viewport, you've noticed that you have a lot of small pixel, big pixel, small pixel until you get to something nice. And that's down to the render preferences, to the IPR undersampling.
Yes.
Okay, so if you want to see, by default, it's on 2, I think, or 3 or something like, yeah. If you want to see things less pixelated at the beginning, put it at 0 or 1. Okay, and that will give you you can leave the viewport rendering. You don't have to stop it and restart it. You only do that sometimes when it doesn't update. There are things that are dirtying the scene and other things that are not dirtying the scene as expected. So sometimes you have to do a bit of manual refresh. But other than that, you can leave it running, to be honest. It's really fast, except when you have the Nvidia issue.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, I guess we should round up because we've got a little bit over, but you know, we love to do that, don't we, here at Maxon? So as a reminder, this session was recorded. So if you want to rewatch this and dive into Redshift for Blender, then it will be on the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel in a number of hours time and timestamped as well, which will be lovely. And also next Monday, Ian's had to jump off, but he'll be diving into Redshift for ZBrush. And also on that note, there is a very special announcement happening this Wednesday, which I believe is the 11th at 11 a.m. PST. So head over to the maxon.net page and you can see there's some info and some links for that, but I can't say any more because it's an announcement for a reason. So you've got to wait until Wednesday. But yeah, don't forget to have a look at that and join us for next Monday's session with Ian. And thanks again to Lionel. Thank you to Adrian for answering those questions, and to everyone in the questions area that was asking them. Thank you for being part of our sessions, and we shall see you next Monday. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.